Pastor Westbrook. Pastor Muller, thank you so much for the introduction. You know I'm an emotional person.
Yeah.
When you hear those type of comments, you're grateful.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. As you go through life, you wonder, have you done what God has expected of you?
Well.
Thank you again,
Thank you.
Pastor Milo. Again, to the addition to the pastors, office members and friends, it's always great to be in God's house.
Yeah. Amen.
As you reach my age and about my senior's age, a lot of things happen to you.
Yeah.
You have to adjust glasses, adjust dentures, adjust hearing aids, and a whole bunch of things. So kind of bear with me, because I'm going to have to move over here to play a little CD, just a small portion. Just a couple of comments.
Yeah.
We're looking in the audience and we see history. One thing I feel we must do, we must recognize our own heroes, our own heroes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
First one I'm going to introduce is sitting in the audience. It's Leon Brady.
That's right.
He's one of the heroes.
Yes, he is.
And oftentimes we don't recognize him. I'm not going to go into detail, but Leon Brady is one of our heroes that should be recognized.
That's right.
Oftentimes we overlook people who are close to us. Let me begin by saying I'm always pleased to be in the presence of Robert Milan Sr.,
All right.
a man that I admire and respect. Kansas City, Kansas, in particular, the African American community will probably never really appreciate what he has done for this community. Let me say, Bob, this morning, that I salute you.
Amen.
I often wonder how many of us have visited, I'm not going to call it a power plant, I don't know the official name, but there's a station named in memory of Bob Milan Sr. How many of you have been by to take a look at it? And if you haven't, check it out. Take your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and let them know that this was a man who passed through here. Let me also say that I have a good friend with me who's videoing. He's Clifford Liggins, who's president of our neighborhood group.
Amen.
And we do take people. This Thursday, fellow doesn't live in our immediate community, but he lives. He's a child of God. He lives in Kansas City, Kansas. His name is Walter DePriest. He will be 100 years old on March 28th. He was born in a suburb of Tupelo, Mississippi. And anybody who's lived that long has a real story to tell. We're just a comment about Betty. Betty has a lot of people here. And the story I'd like to tell on Betty, Betty along with another good friend, Marion Griffin. Marion, hold up your hand. And Betty. We all learned a lot on the HW somewhere. And they both came out of Sumner and worked there. I was kind of in charge. Mrs. Thorne was down at the bank. But Betty, I always had to kind of look over their work. Marion later became a full-time employee, one of the best employees HW Swanning Company ever had. But when Betty came, Mrs. Thorne said, make sure to do everything perfect. And back then they had typing paper. Any young people know what carbon paper? Well, Betty, I wasn't accepting the strike orders. Betty would get so upset at me. But years later, I received a call from Betty that this has been at least 15, maybe 20 years. She said, I'm calling from the office of President of, I think it was Kaiser Permanente, and said, I used to get angry at you because you were not accepting the strikeovers. But I thank you. That meant so much to me, is that we should never accept things that are mediocre.
That's right. That's right.
We got to cut that out. The 2019 theme for the Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History is Black Migration, and I will follow that theme. Many of us here, present here this morning, are descendants of persons who migrated from the South seeking better education opportunities for their children and to escape overt racial oppression and terrorism that was present where they lived. And they also wanted the opportunity to vote. I'm going to stop right here and play just a portion of a CD. When I saw the dancers here this morning, it brings back a lot of memory because I have lived a portion of 9 decades. I'm not 90 years old, but I'm kicking the door down on it. That right, Bob? You stop, count up the number of decades that you've lived through. I just want to play a portion of a CD back in the day. In the late 20s, the government realized, a lot of people realized that there was never really an accurate history of slavery. So the government funded a program to try and capture some voices from slavery. Most of the people who actually had been in slavery were deceased. But there were children and grandchildren. And so they went around the country and made a tape. It's called Remembering Slavery. I can remember growing up, sitting and talking to my grandmother, who was born in the early 1870s, and she would talk about slavery and what her parents told her. Let me play this just a minute. And we have young people, and I'm not picking on young people because I think you all are great. Y'all have done a great job because you're having to deal with things that we never had to dream of dealing with.
Right, right.
But listen to this. Let me see if I can get this started.
Tonia Stewart. When I was a little girl, about 5 or 6 years old, I used to sit on the garret, the front porch. In the Mississippi Delta, the front porch was called the garret, and listen to Papa Dallas. He was blind and had these ugly scars around his eyes. One day I asked Papa Dallas, what happened to his eyes? Well, daughter, he answered, when I was mighty young, just about your age, I used to steal away under a big oak tree, and I tried to learn my alphabets so that I could learn to read my Bible. But one day, the overseer caught me, and he dragged me out on the plantation, and he called out for all the field hands, and he turned to him and said, let this be a lesson to all of you darkies. You ain't got no right to learn to read. And then, daughter, he whipped me. And he put me. And he put me. And daughter, as if that wasn't enough, he turned around and burned my eyes out. At that instant, I began to cry. The tears were streaming down my cheeks, leading under my chin. But he cautioned me. Mm-mm. Don't you cry for me now, daughter. Now you listen to me. I want you to promise me one thing. Promise me that you's gonna pick up every book you carry and you's gonna read it from cover to cover. You see, today, daughter, ain't nobody gonna whip you or burn your eyes out because you want to learn to read. Promise me that you're gonna go all the way through school as far as you can. And one more thing. I want you to promise me that you was going to tell all the children my story.
I want to play that. This is not something someone made up. This is an actual story. There are hours of those stories where people tell about what happened. And as Pastor Wedworth said this morning, we're looking to see how far we've come. It's utter amazing. We can't take anything for granted anymore.
Amen.
Let me say that, again, the national theme for the Association of Study of Afro-American Life and History of Black Migration. And I've done a version of this at another location. Now, you're first in line, so you're not second hand. You're first in line. But I did alter the other. Doesn't have as much information in as the one with Greater Faith. I'm doing a Greater Faith. Oh, Pastor Madden called me and he said, Justin, when it's canceled, but we're going to have it. And he said, and you can talk as long as you want. I said to myself, Pastor Madden, do you really know what you're saying? How did Black History start? And who initiated it? I'm sure that everybody in here knows, but just in case you may have forgotten or do not know, let me read just a portion, a sentence from the original pamphlet from how Black History started. This is the original, a copy of the original pamphlet. Oftentimes, material we're receiving now are not accurate. I'm going to leave this for you, Pastor Michael.
Okay.
You can read, and if any other members are interested, you can share it with them. The Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History was begun by Dr. Carter G. Woodson in Chicago, Illinois in 1915. Dr. Woodson and some of his associates. The purpose, there were 4 purposes. Number 1, to promote historical research. Number 2, to publish books on Negro life and history. Number 3, to promote the study of Negroes through clubs and schools. And number 4, to bring out harmony, to bring about harmony among the races by interpreting one to the other. I feel that we should always know as much as we can about whatever we're involved in. Let me read just a little bit more what's on this pamphlet. Dr. Woodson raised the question, why the Negro in history? He states that if a race has no history, it has no worthwhile tradition. It becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world and stands in danger of being exterminated. Let me read that again. It stands in danger of being exterminated. He states the Hebrew keenly appreciates the worth of tradition and is attested by the Bible itself. In spite of the worldwide persecution. Therefore, he still is a great factor in the universe. This is just one of the many quotes from the pamphlet. Whenever I speak, oftentimes, I carry this around. It's called Remembering the Holocaust. It's from newspaper. You see this in newspaper at least 2 times a year, whole articles. And on the back it has reminder, we've always heard this, never again. There were 6 million Jews exterminated. No one knows, but it's estimated that over 100,000 Africans died just in transportation across the Atlantic or in the Atlantic Ocean. Not to mention the millions of Africans who went to what is now South America and our descendants who came to North America. How many of you know that there were more descendants of Africans in South America than in North America?
All right.
Many of us not aware of that. Another article about 10 years ago said, after 60 years, the horror is still strong. Let me just read just a couple of comments out of this. Because every year they get together and talk to their children, talk to people. They go around the country. They have a train, they have a museum. They go around the country. They're in schools here in Kansas City. These are in Johnson County. And they talk about what happened to them. One of the descendants stated, our children and grandchildren